I think for guys like me who've had multiple combat deployments, seen a lot of, death and destruction, I don't think you ever get past that. I think it's something that you just get comfortable living with. Your problems don't leave you just because you left your home and joined the Army. A lot of those problems are going to follow you. So,
wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah, exactly. Peaks in the work that we can do here is really going to mesh with kind of where I think the Army's going with, mental health and substance use. Help is not a cookie cutter solution, right?
And welcome to another episode of Finding Peaks. We're at 100 and something, getting close to 200 actually, but I am really excited today to be joined by my good friend, colleague, Army veteran, a good friend of mine, newly integrated into Peaks Recovery, Military Liaison, Michael Solley. Grateful to have you on the show, sir.
Thanks to having me here.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. I met Mike in jiu-jitsu about 4 years ago. Our kids fight together and kind of do this stuff, and had a meeting with him a couple months ago, and we were on the precipice, as I've talked about on the show, of really starting to have a big community integration and a larger footprint for not only our service members, our active service members, but their families and their children. And so Mike's playing a huge role and already began to play a huge role in integrating us down there at Fort Carson. And what makes you, Mike, what makes you so excited about kind of this new path forward for you professionally?
Well, I think kind of for me, it's a little novel. It's new. It's not really a space that I'm used to really working in. So dealing with substance use disorder and mental health. But, there's kind of an understanding of what the problems are when you're an active duty service member and you've got, you're toggling a career and a family and, whatever baggage you brought with you from the civilian world into, your home life in the Army. And so I just feel like it's an opportunity to kind of be a member of a team with you guys that is really fulfilling for me, and also help some people that can, really use the help and maybe don't have coping mechanisms that are going to be useful to them in the future, or just useful to them in the present, dealing with the day-to-day life of being in the military. And as dynamic as the world is right now, it would be helpful to have some coping mechanisms for sure. So it's just an opportunity to give back, I think, a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could tell. It's interesting, Mike and I's relationship came together. I really had no idea what he did. He had no idea what we did. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, we found ourselves in the same rooms together, whether it was Albuquerque last year or, the meeting this year. And I think there's just something about some connectedness from a human perspective. And I think it goes back to childhood. I think it has to go with growing up. I think it has to do with development and developmental stages when people were there and when they weren't there. And I think your experience, not only developmentally, but professionally in the Army, aims to serve that when you have a great person to your right and a great person to your left, you can do really cool things.
Yeah, for sure. I think kind of us getting to this point has kind of been the story of my life a little bit. I've always kind of was like, who do I need to hitch my wagon to, right? Mm-hmm. Who do I need to surround myself with? And when things were going really good for me, I hitched my wagon to the right people and kind of surrounded myself with people that I knew were going to help me get to the future that I wanted, or whether it was to be a good husband or to be a good father or to be, good at my job, or just, to be a good team player, or just to be a good friend, So I've always kind of been on the lookout for that. And we've had conversations in the past Chris, I'd like to sit down and talk to you a little bit more, and I think that I've always just kind of been aware of who's around me and what's my impression of what are they about, So that people relationship kind of thing has kind of always been something I'm attracted to, you know.
And not only that, but something you've had to develop. You talk about the leadership style in the Army and how you've brought guys through, and some of it's super compelling and interesting to me because it's a really dynamic leadership style that clearly works in one of the largest companies in the entire world. And so what was it about, and I think this will kind of draw into the passion where we sit today, but what was it about being a young man in the military that you felt like was going to be a good fit for you? And maybe you can take the viewers through, what that young journey was like.
Yeah, so born and raised in Houston, Texas, had a lot of different experiences in my childhood, some really, really bad, some really, really good, but always was kind of looking for that, I guess, father figure, or just that archetype of like, what is a man, right? Mm-hmm. So my dad was kind of like, my biological father was very troubled, had a lot of issues, a lot of substance abuse, a lot of, there was some domestic violence and, just not a stable home life. And then my mom and dad separated, and she met my stepfather, great guy, but not like very forthcoming with his emotions, told us he was proud of us, told us he loved us. Mm-hmm. But there was no hugs. There was no like, hey, let me sit you down and put you on some game right now because you're going to need this in the future. Because I just don't know if he ever felt like that was his place. Right. And so here I am, fast forward to 2002, and I'm this troubled kid who's like doing drugs and kind of don't really know what I'm doing with my life. And 9/11 happens as a senior in high school. And I'm kind of going through, I'd moved out of my house and was working and still in school by the grace of God, and then the Army recruiter called me one day out of the blue in like April. We had just invaded Afghanistan. He was like, hey, you ever thought about joining the Army? And I was like, no, but I'm thinking about it now. I kind of just, from that phone call, decided I was going to finish school, work that summer, and this is what I was going to do. I always kind of felt like I was pulled to go somewhere and do something. Because I just knew that there was more to life than kind of what I was doing. Mm-hmm. And went to basic training in August of 2002, and found myself in Iraq not very long after that, So, but as far as your question goes, I think that, as a young man in the military, I was really looking for like, what is a man? Mm-hmm. Well, now you're around all of these men and they come from all these different places, which I was not thinking about. Mm-hmm. And I see like the ones that are like doing really good and they've got all of these schools and they've been to all these places and they've jumped out of planes and, it was always just like, I want to do that. I want to do that. It was like fear of missing out. Like if I didn't do it, I was going to miss out on some great opportunity, even though I didn't know what it was. Yeah. But I think just a yearning to like know more. I was always kind of inquisitive and curious about people who did hard things. I think that that's a really sometimes undervalued in just your day-to-day dealings with people and walking through life. It's like I always placed a really high importance on people who did like hard things. Like, oh man, that looks hard. Mm-hmm. That is like really like how do you do that? Mm-hmm. And then you realize it's like an elephant that you have to eat. You just eat it one bite at a time, and it, sucks really hard. And then you get used to that. You get inoculated to that. And so I think that's kind of what it was. Just a little bit of adventure seeking, and then also kind of like wanting to see what's out there, So yeah, that makes sense.
And I'm sure every season as you progress through, 22, 23 your career is a new baseline.
Yeah.
And a new threshold of like what is actually possible, right? Because the stories you've explained to me, and I think that's really something really, really cool that the Army and the Armed Forces can cultivate for you if you go in there is like they can help this rapid growth and development process, and they can create possibility where there's impossibility,
right?
And new foundations where it was I couldn't even dream that big,
Yeah, I think the cool thing, at least my experience in the Army, is like people have done the math before you, and it's not there's not always like these cookie cutter solutions to all of your problems, but there's a lot of them, and it's like if you don't have like a set of values or a set of beliefs or a leadership style or a set of principles to doing anything, somebody before you sat down, a lot of them really smart guys, and like did that homework, and they were like, hey man, these are the things that like make people tick, right? You're going to get to a point in the Army where you're the one having to figure out what makes people tick, and you're the one that's having to like show them that inspired leadership, and you're going to be the one that has to figure out how to get these people to do this thing that they wouldn't do on their own, and then like get them to do it and do it well, you know? So I think that that's super, like, it was just always very interesting to me that somebody sat down and like really broke down the kind of the human psyche, at least for like a soldier. And was like, hey, we've done all this, we've experienced this. This is what worked for us, and this is what didn't. Now times change, and you know, people change, and you kind of got to figure out like, you know, what the leadership is for that season, like what your style is. But you know, I think a lot of really good leadership, if you went and talked to those people, like, where'd you get your leadership style? They can probably point back to like the people that they saw do it really well, and the people that they saw do it not very well. So. I would like to, you know, just give credit to all those great leaders before me that I had the pleasure to serve with, and all of it was just imitation, you know.
So. I love it though. I mean, where did you know in your military career that you were going to move into like this more leadership role? When did you know like, hey, this is going to be this isn't seasonal?
It happens pretty fast, man.
Yeah.
You know, like I was a young 19-year-old kid in Tikrit, Iraq. And man, the world simplifies when you go to war, you know, you know, you got to just make sure your weapon's clean, make sure you're right place, right time, right uniform, radios are working, trucks fill up with fuel. You know, I got all the stuff I need to do our mission. And then, you know, at least my experience in the Army is like your leadership potential is kind of based off of a lot of your potential to be a good subordinate, you know, like. I know I always look for that as leaders. Like, man, this guy just takes care of his business, and he doesn't have to be told to do a lot of things. And of course, you have to be taught to do these things. But once you're taught, are you taking that like disciplined initiative to go out and do whatever it was you needed to do to make sure that we could go and, you know, fight the nation's enemies? You know, so I think it happened pretty quick after that first deployment. We came back, you know, 12-month deployment. Was there pretty much all of 2004. They were like, hey, you're going to the sergeant board. We want you have to study and go stand in front of all these first sergeants and the sergeant major, and they kind of just drill you on all these questions. And it's like, okay, well, you did what you had to do as a soldier. Now you've demonstrated that you are willing to like sit down and study regulation and all this stuff, and that you want to go to the next level to be a leader. So, you know, as a sergeant, you know, so I think I was a sergeant by the time I was 20, 21 maybe, you know? So, yeah, not very long. I was like in charge of a squad, you know, as like a 21-year-old kid, you know?
Yeah, people are juniors in college.
Yeah.
It's out there.
Yeah.
It's like, all right.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And you know, I didn't think nothing of it. I thought that's just how it is. You know, I knew that like, this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to grow. You're supposed to like learn how to do new things, and then there's going to be people coming in after you, and you have to impart your knowledge on them. It was not ever something that I ever really questioned.
Did you deploy twice before you were a sergeant?
No, I deployed one time before I was a sergeant, and then quick rundown of my like deployments kind of in that time. It was like 2004. We went to Tikrit. I made sergeant like as soon as we got back, it was a weird time. I'm sure you remember like the stop loss stuff.
I know the
movie. Like people were
it.
getting ready to get out of the Army before we deployed the first time, and they're like, "Hey, you're not getting out. You're staying in. You got to do
deployment.
And
then you can get out when you get back.
And then you can get out. Yeah. So dudes are like thinking that they're good. They're going home. I don't have to deploy. And it's like, hey, you know, actually, I need you to go draw all of your gear again because you've already turned it in, but you're staying. And so we went and did that deployment, come back, and everybody left. There was like this mass exodus. We had like a platoon of like 40-something guys. It went down to 7 people. And then all these new people started coming in, and none of them had been anywhere. They were all like almost all brand new privates.
It was like the ones that were seniors, because I graduated in 04. It was my people that were coming in.
Yeah. So like, and nobody ever came to like take my job. Like a guy that was senior to me, a staff sergeant. So it was like, hey, Sergeant Solley, 20-year-old Sergeant Solley, you're in charge of these 7 guys. And then fast forward to 2006, a year and a half later, they're like, oh yeah, still nobody's came to take my job. You're going to take these 7 dudes or 8 dudes to war again in Baghdad, you know, during the surge. So talk about, I had to be full of piss and vinegar, like just to figure out how to do all that. And
what kind of bond you building with those 7, 8 guys? Like, it's got to be.
I mean, we were tight.
Yeah.
So all of those guys, there was just a few of us. One really good friend of mine named Joe. He was kind of like the senior of us, but just barely. You know, he went to Kosovo, and I didn't go on that deployment because I wasn't there yet. So like he had that one thing on me.
He's like 22.
Yeah, he was like 20. He was maybe a year and a half older than me, you know. And we're the senior dudes, you know. So, but hey, you know that we were great because we were in our own minds hard as woodpecker lips, and nobody could tell us different.
Yeah.
So
it takes a little bit of that, man.
for sure.
Wow. Yeah. So by the time you're essentially most kids are getting their bachelor's degree, you're on your second deployment.
Yeah, I'm on my second deployment, and you know, kicking indoors every night for 15 months, and in Baghdad, Iraq. You know?
Wow.
So it was, it definitely lets you know what you're made of pretty quickly, you know.
Sebastian Junger. I was trying to think of it. Do you know, it's Sebastian Junger, right, Kuv?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sebastian Junger we had on the podcast. Mm-hmm. He's an author. He's not a military member, but he was interested on why people thrive in wartime settings and why they merely, if they're doing well, survive when they get back. And so what he did, he's very invested in this project. He went and sat in the foxholes in Afghanistan with these people like you guys, with your 7 people.
Yeah.
And he wrote about it. And his book's short, and I read it. And it's because I think like the precipice, like the pinnacle of the human experience is being seen, valued, and heard is what connects you in community.
Right.
And I got to imagine what he said was like in those foxholes with those people, the person you're writing, you don't experience a deeper level of connection. You can't.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Like, how would you, right?
Yeah, it's like being married, right? If you're married for any like long duration of time, you see everything about that person. You see what you love about them. You see what you like about them. You see what you hate about them. You see what you don't like about them, but you can tolerate, right? So like, you know, you spend so much time with these guys, and like, number one, like you want to be successful. You want to do your job well, right? But you also have these people that you're like responsible for almost every aspect of their life. I need to make sure that they're fed, that they can do hygiene, that they can, you know, do all the maintenance on their equipment that they need to be. Are they talking to their family? You know, are they getting the sleep that they need to get? You know, and so I didn't know all of that stuff as a 22-year-old sergeant, you know, but I knew. I was lucky enough to have a really good platoon sergeant, platoon leader, and I was lucky enough to have just some good guys with me. And we all kind of figured it out together. They probably figured it out and then told me what to do, you know. But you know, like, and then at the end of the day, like, you don't want to be sending people home in caskets. You know, that's heavy.
Yeah.
And it's especially heavy when you're very immature and you're young. You know, but it wasn't something that was lost on us very quickly because, especially that second deployment, we lost a lot of guys in that unit, and you know, you didn't want to be the one to mess it up. You didn't want to be the bad egg. You didn't want to be the piece of crap that's not pulling his weight. It was always kind of my motivation. It's like, man, no, you got to do your job because there's people that depend on you, you know? And so that was, you know, that was a very humbling experience, even though if I didn't realize how much at the time it was humbling me.
Yeah, just because of how young you were.
Yeah, I had no perspective on anything.
Now you look back, you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
And I mean, we show up at peaks, you hear me, I'm like, today's the Super Bowl. Because there's lives on the line.
Yeah.
But even more, like, you know, like, seriously, like, if I can't rely on Peter, I could be cooked today.
Right.
You know, and there's a level of trust and a depth and a weight to relationship.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because you got to read that Sebastian Junger. You'll love it.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
It's good stuff.
For sure.
Yeah, people seem to thrive in what other people might think to be, oh my gosh, how do you do it?
Right.
No way.
There's things I look back on all the time and I'm like, man, how did we pull that off? Like, you know, like I'm just amazed at like some of the things that we were capable of doing and these young men and women too, you know, like some of the things that we were able to do, you know, like how do you get 18 to 22-year-old kids to be like, hey, we're going to go walk over that mountain and we'll be back in 3 days. You know, like,
Yeah, like what? Yeah, bring some water, bro.
yeah, exactly. We're going to walk 35 kilometers
bring your
across
RX
this
bar.
mountain range or this valley in Afghanistan. You know, it's like, I never would have dreamed that I was even capable of doing that, you know, but.
Literally, we're going out 3 days on foot.
Yeah, it's real.
Sleep where we can sleep.
Yeah, we'll go live in a goat pen or something for a day and then we'll move on to the next one. You know?
Yeah, some people think they like the outdoors. You know?
Yeah.
Backpacking, dude.
My wife always gives me a hard time. She's like, you want to go hike? It's like, I've done a lot of hiking.
You know what? I'm all hiked out, man.
Not all hiked out, but I got to be in the mood for it for sure.
You tell Tim, man, see, they dropped me off, man. They picked me up 2 days later.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I'd be walking all over the place.
Yeah. Or they're like, hey, we got to wait for these helicopters to come pick us up. We can't. We're too far to walk back. We're like in a very extended range of like artillery with these special rounds that can reach us. Like we have no support.
We outstepped our support here.
Yeah,
We're
for
gonna
sure.
Get back in the line.
Yeah.
That's funny, man. Yeah. What a wild ride. So both Afghanistan and Iraq?
Yeah. So I did. I went to Iraq twice. Iraq started kind of cooling off about 2008, and it eventually kind of wrapped up, and then went to RC East in Afghanistan, Ghazni, kind of doing some like making sure that the main highway through Afghanistan was kind of staying clear. Not at that.
Everybody likes to blow it up.
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of like the modus operandi at the
It's
of the
one
time.
highway.
Yeah.
Oh, damn.
So they'll just put a huge house-sized hole in the middle of it, and you're like, all right, no, you got to figure this out.
Get
And
the tractor out of it.
Yeah. So we would like, do a lot of stuff in the villages around there, just kind of trying to keep that secure, and that wasn't too bad. And then did that for like I think 7 months or so. And then went and did some other assignments, and kind of Afghanistan cooled off a little bit, and then ended up back in Iraq in 2017 in Mosul fighting ISIS. So yeah, four different combat deployments, mostly with the 1st Infantry Division and the 82nd Airborne Division. But like I look at the time, I hated it, but I look back on it, I'm like, man, what a time to be alive,
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of hurt, but a lot of good too. And it really builds character, especially as you consider like those deployments, like the first one in 2004, I was like living in Saddam's palace. And then the last one in 2017, I'm like living in this bombed out building, or like filling sandbags to just kind of keep overhead cover and stay safe, and like right where everything was happening in Mosul. So,
Man, this shifted a little bit here.
Yeah, for sure.
Like what?
Yeah.
And you're older and more mature and wise to everything.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Well, I think the older and more mature and wiser I got, I think the more scared I got,
Something about that naivety that's like.
Yeah. Like if you, how can you be scared of something you don't know you're supposed to be scared of it? You know? So.
One of my big things, and you've heard me say it, is, and it'd be interesting if somehow Peaks and the mission can reach this deep, but I've always wondered why we don't roll out the red carpet, especially for folks coming back from war times. Like you get off the plane, you get 30 days off, you get a nice spa retreat, some good therapy, maybe it's an Ibogaine, maybe it's one of these things that we know are like helping people get through this, because one of the saddest things I see, like if they make it to the chair you're sitting in, all is well that ends well.
Right.
But not a lot of people make it to the chair you're sitting in.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's still a lot of combat vets, especially like us GWAT kids. That's kind of the term that's getting thrown around now. There's still a lot of guys out there that are productive, but there's a lot of guys who are not. And I couldn't tell you why I think people don't like kind of roll out the red carpet per se for combat vets. It's like, I think there's still a little bit of a stigma. It's almost like, think about Memorial Day, right? You want to tell people like, hey, happy Memorial Day. Like we should celebrate this day. But how do you celebrate something that's sad? How do you celebrate something that has so much grief and loss attached to it? People tell me all the time, thank you, you know, and they were when we were coming home. But I don't really know how to put my thumb on like what it is that kind of keeps us from kind of like being like putting those guys on a pedestal. Not that I necessarily think they always should be, but it's almost like a dirty little secret. Like, hey, I'm proud of you, but man, like war sucks, you know. Like all of this is bad, you know, and for whatever reason we're over there for reasons you agree with or you disagree with, but and then at the end of the day, you know, it comes down a lot of times to, you know, dollars too, you know. But there are a lot of people out there who did a lot of great things for their country and did a lot of great things for the people to the left and right of them that are really, really, really struggling. Right?
Yeah, and that's my thing. It's it was one of the saddest things to see when I came to Colorado Springs and we weren't in network with TRICARE or TriWest, is that somebody could go work on a military installation and then get Blue Cross Blue Shield Federal to cover any treatment program in the United States. And here our service members, active and otherwise families and dependents, don't have a space to call home like that. And so there's just such a division there. And so I'm starting to see, at least through TRICARE, some little bit more access to care. There's one program I've told you about. It's been in network with TRICARE forever, and it's I think one of the greatest programs in the country. And it's the Meadows in Wickenburg, Arizona. So, but yeah, I just think, you know, you've talked about it before. We have a huge investment in these men and women, oftentimes millions of dollars invested and for good reason. I just wonder if we invested a fraction of that in the aftercare or the aftermath, you know.
I can tell you right now, like the military and the government doesn't always do good with like the follow through on things. Like the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Like there's usually good intentions behind anything at like the operational level in the Army. It's like, hey, we're going to do this thing, we're going to do this thing, we're going to make sure we take care of you. Well, it's like you get the thing done and then dollars dry up, and then, you know, there's like, you know, leadership change, or there's you know, a new party is taken over in office, and agendas change quickly, right? And so it's kind of, yeah, it does. It goes back and forth. I saw it go back and forth a couple of times just in my 22 years. But, you know, I think it's just really just not the hot plate item, you know, and that's really unfortunate, because there's a lot of people who probably could still be very productive members of society and take those leadership lessons that they learned from those mentors to the left and right and all those good people and apply it to their business dealings or their home life or just their day-to-day interactions with people. And they can't, because they are hung up with substance abuse, or they're hung up with PTSD and just, you know, emotional regulation. So it is a fortunate thing that I think happens. And it definitely is something that, you know, we could be doing better as a nation, you know.
I wonder, I'm sure they're beginning to do more of a cost benefit analysis on it. Long term. And it could, for me, it's almost, and I don't, you tell me, but like, it almost seems like just redefining when the mission's complete. You know, some term around it.
I think, you know, I think for guys like me who've had multiple combat deployments, seen a lot of, you know, death and destruction, I don't think you ever get past that. I think it's something that you just get comfortable living with. You know, it's like a monster that lives in your room. He's not going to do anything to you, or if you pay him the correct attention. But the minute you stop paying attention to him and stop feeding him in the way he needs to be fed to keep him docile and quiet, he shows up. You know, so
and what you mean by that is like showing up, doing hard things, getting some sun on your face, doing some jiu-jitsu, lifting some weights, doing things you don't want to do, moving through uncomfortability, which is, That's the RX, but man, it's just really difficult for some people to get there.
Getting started and then keeping it going once you do. I'm a living testament of that.
Yeah.
Like if I'm not doing, those hard things or working out or challenging myself, whether it's my mind or my body, I'm not the best version of me. So I'm blessed enough and lucky enough that I realize that. Like I understand that there are things I have to do for me to be the best version of myself. There's so many guys that never got to that point, that like I did all this stuff in the Army and then like I got out and, the economy was bad when the wars were slowing down, 2009, 10, 11, 12. And then you're stuck and you've developed all these little things that are just hanging off of you. And you don't have any way to kind of put it away and get on with your life.
Yeah, and then the new baseline becomes really difficult.
Yeah.
Foundation.
Yeah, because this is the new normal, is like just grinning and bearing, every day. And that's hard. And I hate that for people. It's like you gave so much of yourself, whether it be physically or mentally, and now you're just this empty shell and you have no purpose and you're not living a fulfilled life, when I think you should. If you go to war as a young man, you come back, not a whole lot of reasons better than to like live a fulfilled life and be like, hey, I made it through all of that.
Yeah.
So, but we lose perspective on that.
I know, man. And I really want, like, when you talk about this, like, I almost think, well, insurance wouldn't pay for it.
Yeah.
But just like a retreat for like military service members. I always think of like Cameron Haynes and the work those guys do with Ubermen and the military, and just they'll carry a stone up a mountain. Yeah. Sounds crazy, man, but like the bonds that are formed, the resilience that's obtained, the connectedness that's it's spiritual, man. It's like church.
Yeah, shared suffering, right?
Yeah.
Shared suffering is that's
so good.
That's why you see people that have been, together, like married for a long time. And they've really been through it.
You get these
They're just so calm. They're like,
whatever.
Yeah.
It's like
shared suffering is like, I don't think you can be inoculated against something better than that. But, the trade-off is like, if you've done a lot of shared suffering with somebody, you got to continue that community once you get out of the military. I was, luckily smart enough to realize that, like, for me, that was like jujitsu. Like I knew I was like, okay, I had to get out fast. I ended up having to have a neck surgery, got medically retired. And I was like, I'm going to need somebody. I'm going to need some form of dudes around me to like just keep me sane, and you know what? It's still hard to talk to him. It's still hard to be like, hey, man, I need help.
Hey, man. How you doing?
Yeah. I'm not doing great.
Yeah, not good, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be tough, man. But then when you do it, it's a very cool thing. And I think even more so, I've always said, like, community for me is everything. But going back to Sebastian Junger's work and your experience, it's like, man, can I just get, like, I actually really, really need a great person on my right, great person on my left.
Yeah.
Like, it's actually non-negotiable, especially from what you're telling me with combat vets. Like, that's at the very least what is necessary for thriving for somebody who's been through that type of intensity.
Yeah, for sure. That's
baseline.
Yeah, and it's like, whether it's you're doing something hard together, or you experience loss together, or you do something really good together. I think when you're kind of in the military and you're deploying and going to war, the whole time you're just like, I just want some privacy. I want some peace. I want to be away from these dudes. And then you look, fast forward 10 years in the future and you're not in the military anymore. And you're like, man, I wish I missed that, like the brotherhood. And you might not even like all the dudes in your unit, but they're still there. They're still doing the same crap you are, and that's a really hard thing to find, like in civilian society in America. Is like, hey, these are the boys. The boys ain't changing. The boys ain't going nowhere,
Yeah.
So
that's what that's why I love this recovery process so much, and feel like I was just like extraordinarily blessed and been able to turn pain into purpose at like a really young age. Is like, dude, like, I felt like I was fighting for my life. Yeah. I was either going to die in a prison cell or somewhere out in the street doing something stupid, some high risk behavior. And then you get these other guys, very similar, like in a way, like we're going into AA, we're going into this thing as 20-year-olds. We're not going to drink anymore.
Yeah.
We're not going to do drugs. We're going to fucking do it together.
Yeah.
And then we're going to meet at the gym in the evening and fucking just turn up the music.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you do this with these people for like 5, 6, 7, 10, 14, 13. And you're like, I just feel so grateful that actually was the ethos of which recovery has to go through, is this connection thing. But as a young kid, if you don't go to war, if you don't, you're not fighting for your life or an opiate addiction, like you don't see that.
Yeah. I think that's a really great segue into kind of like, I think a big thing for military members, especially guys with combat trauma and stress, is like, we booze together hard. When in our off time, like we worked hard and we played hard. And then like you start looking for that camaraderie and that community again, and you're not in the military anymore, and you're like, oh, well, I used to, we'd go party hard with the boys. Well, now you don't have those same boys. Those boys don't have the same experience. And then you find yourself partying hard by yourself, because that's the only thing you have left from that, and you're, a lot of people just can't really figure that out. It's like, I'm doing all this because I'm looking for a feeling that I had when I had this community. And now I don't have this community anymore, and I'm self-isolating, and I'm abusing substances or whatever your vice is, and that's, I think, a real problem. A lot of my friends that I've talked to, they're retired or ETS'd in their term of service out of the military. A lot of them went through that, I just recently went and saw a bunch of guys I went to combat with not too long ago in February. We, good friend of mine, he was one of my soldiers, passed away in a motorcycle wreck, and we were just kind of catching up, eating dinner and stuff, and we're like, kind of went off the deep end, went on like a 2-year bender, and kind of just now pulling myself up by the bootstraps. And it's like, why do we let it get that far? Like it's 2026. I can pick up the phone and call anybody, so a little bit of the onus is on us too. But it's a real thing, man.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain. It's hard to explain that feeling of, I've lost something, but I don't know what I lost, and I don't know how to communicate it, and it's companionship.
Yep.
I think so.
I think so too. I mean, pretty clearly, even just from hanging out with you and the other vets and combat vets I've had the opportunity to check in with. And it's interesting too, because I've been doing this work a long time, and I'm not able to make the impact in that community that you're able to make.
Yeah.
And which I think is really, really special, and that's why I'm so excited. He's going to go sneak me onto Fort Carson later, and but we're going to Fort Carson here next week, man. We got, we're sitting down with people, and I think you have a real opportunity with the support of Peaks behind you, frankly, with the programs they describe that they work with, to do something incredibly impactful, not only in Fort Carson, but in Colorado Springs and potentially, the region, the world, make big impacts.
Right. Super excited about that too. I understand kind of the problems that they have as far as like being a leader in those units down there. And, there's never enough providers. There's always too many patients that are coming in. And I think that Peaks and the work that we can do here is really going to mesh with kind of where I think the Army's going with, like mental health and substance use. Like, help is not a cookie cutter solution, right? The Army is always like, hey, we're going to give you the one size fits most solution. And for a lot of people, what they're providing on Fort Carson is probably more than enough, right? But there are times when maybe there is a wait, or maybe there is somebody does need some acute care, or whatever the case may be, and Fort Carson can't provide that. I think we can help fill those gaps, especially being here in the community. I think that that's very important. I know that I wish when I retired that I would have been a little more preemptive and preparing myself for dealing with regular civilian life problems. A lot of times the solution, or at least my solution in the Army, was like, hey, just walk in, dominate the room. If you're in charge, be in charge. That doesn't work all the time out here.
Like, dang, man.
Like, bro, who is this guy, and who does he think he is?
Insane.
For sure. But that's a real thing. And like, people think that you leave a bad home environment from wherever you are. XYZ USA, and it's like, your problems don't leave you just because you left your home and joined the Army. Like a lot of those problems are going to follow you. So, you know,
wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what they say. I got sober. I was like, well, I think I'm just going to move to Kentucky.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, you still be looking at yourself in the mirror. I'm like, damn.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. If kids were sitting at MAPS in their city and they were like, hey, you got a lot of childhood trauma. All these dudes have childhood trauma too. They were like, no, I don't think I want to do that. But I always say we're not pulling silver spoons out of people's mouth to put them in the military.
Yeah, for sure.
So, like you get around a lot of people like you, a lot of people who grew up like you, a lot of people who have the same problems you had. And then what do you guys do? Y'all do the same thing that y'all were doing when you were, back home. Maybe you're not doing drugs, but you're making up for it with the drinking and partying and staying out late and all whatever, So I do think that we can make a lot of impact in that community. And, like we need it. As a country, we need it. We need healthy people doing that job. We can't afford to have people who are half-cocked, so to say.
Yeah. And I love your approach too, because you obviously the active service members is a huge passion of yours, but you have a family. You had kids in the military.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah.
And so having proper support and good support, like when vets walk in our program, they're like, this is really nice. Like, dude, you deserve nothing less.
Yeah.
Like, bro, you deserve a nice place to figure out your things.
Yeah, and where you can just be you, and people are just going to accept you for you, not what you are, not what your rank says, or what uniform you're wearing, or what silly hat you're wearing. It's like just a place where you don't have to focus on anything but you. And I think that's important. And like we always talk about in the Army is like the servant leadership, intrusive leadership. Well, you can go so far down that rabbit hole that you're not serving yourself like you need to. And then, you don't have any people that you need to serve and be their leader anymore. And your family are not in the Army. And then you have this giant hole in you where you didn't take care of yourself. And you didn't really kind of put the things in order that you needed to continue your life. And that's hard, man. It's not an easy problem to fix. How do you fix 22 years of doing this thing one way?
Yeah.
That's 2 decades.
That's right. That's wild.
Yeah.
And to show up there not as a master sergeant.
Yeah.
But and I've only done treatment and been like CEO, president guy. Like nothing on that level where but I used to have to go home and be like, dude, shut it off. Like that you're not a boss. These aren't your employees. They're not your boys. Like this is your fucking family.
Yeah.
And so I'd have to do this breathing thing, be like, dude, disconnect from whatever you think you're doing right now because they can't handle this type of energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I bet it's even harder on your side.
Well, that's what I did. So I always made sure that I changed clothes before I came home. I would not wear my uniform home. I wouldn't just get in the car and drive home. It's like, okay, I'm taking off the monkey suit. I'm gonna put it away. Now Mike's here. Well, I didn't have a uniform anymore, and there was this like person in me, where do you put him? And where does he go? And so it can be very hard to kind of know who you are and like when I say know who you are, like who is Mike Solley? Because you're, as much as I used to say it, I was like, oh, the Army's not my identity. Well, yeah, bro, it was. Yeah. You were in the Army longer than you were a civilian. Shut up.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah,
you were. Yeah.
So
exactly, man.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Because at 42, at 44, I've been sober longer than half my life.
Exactly.
But you were in longer than half your life.
Yeah.
I mean, that's insane.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is insane, and you think it's not a thing until it is.
Yeah.
And we don't always get to choose the things in our life that are actually things. So I just really feel like I'm kind of being drawn towards like this work. I feel like my life is like that a lot of times. A recruiter calls me out of the blue. I know you for 4 years. I'm like, was really struggling. I'm like, hey, Chris, we should get coffee sometime. I don't think we ever did get that coffee, but and then you're like, hey, we're talking about doing this thing. I want you to come in and talk. And it's like, boom. Sometimes there's just some sort of divine intervention that.
Dude, and on that day, I've told you, like, I'm like, what is this meeting about?
Yeah.
Like they're like Matt and Mike and DC are up front. And I'm like. And I was sitting there and I'm like thinking, maybe there's an agenda. DC and Matt don't schedule meetings where there's not like shit going on. And then it dawns on me like, no, we're just doing this thing. And then I'm like, wait a minute. Mike's the new military liaison. I'm like, it's going down, baby. I'm like, holy shit. It's like perfect time.
Nothing else, I can at least speak the language.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah, I'm really excited to not only have that meeting, but really begin to have a community impact for the people that serve this country, their family members, and really have a more dynamic and more of a custom fit approach to active service members and their families. And I think that's what we're going to be able to cultivate through your willingness and of course the relationships that you already have. Is like, we want to go in there and really say, like, not only how can we fill a gap, but like, what do you need long term? How can we grow this? How can we make it easier? How can we create better soldiers, family members, and the like? So I'm really excited about the opportunity that we have in front of us.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Like, if I could like be king for a day, and it's like, I'm going to make this thing happen. It's like, I feel like there's so many men out there who serve their country, and women too, that they have all of this potential and lessons learned and like how to like be productive and like be productive with it as a team. That if we can help these people who have all these lessons learned and we can put them out there in the community, they can have a huge impact on just the younger generation, I would hate to see just all of that knowledge and just wisdom, it really is just wisdom, just die with them, because that's how wisdom dies, you know? So I think it's a really good opportunity for me to give back and hopefully help enough people and inspire enough people for them to want to get out and give back too, whether that's youth sports or volunteering and or just joining corporate America. Like I think that is so overlooked. It's like, all right, I've done this at the highest stakes. What we're dealing with right now in corporate America, this is not life or death. We can figure this out. Just maybe that level of just confidence, like we can get to yes on this. There's hundreds, thousands of guys out there that are like wired that way, but because they can't get past their own issues and trauma, grief and loss and stuff like that they get stuck and they don't get to help other people because they need help themselves.
Yeah, man, it's going to be I'm really excited. It's been all these years. I mean, we were never in network with TRICARE, TriWest, looking to move into the VA situation as well, and just kind of really move through it. It's cool when they just describe not the companies, but the resources that they've been working with over the years, and why I think Peaks Recovery presents like maybe just a little bit of a differentiator, a little bit different of an opportunity, a more sophisticated, thoughtful, curious way to approach like helping service members. And we approach it from like, well, we don't know. You tell us what you need.
Yeah, what do you need?
Which is wildly insightful.
It is. It's like, how do I get my ego out of the way of this so I can actually help you?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I'm Mike and this is what I can do. It's like, well, hey, what do you need me to do?
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna figure this out. Yeah. That's probably the most, emotionally intelligent thing we could do. And I think that people that need help, especially in the military, they want that. I want you to see me as a person, My last name is on here for a reason. It's who I am. It's not what I do, it's who I am. That's the only thing on this entire uniform that is me, right? So I think that is like going to be a breath of fresh air for people that are, potentially coming to see us. And I just being around the campus and going through some of the, group sessions and individual sessions and kind of seeing how Peaks works, like I think that is going to be a strength for Peaks, helping out service members and their families.
Absolutely. And I love what you were talking about too, is like, dude, my favorite employees are like when combat vets and active service, like when they get it right and they come into like they're the best.
Yeah.
Like Chris in our nursing department, like get out of here. Like he's the best. Why? Well, he figured out a way to get in that seat, to take what he learned in the military, cultivate it, and use it for something good, and add great people to his right and to his left. And so I love that what you're talking about is like potentially doing job fairs up there is like for nursing and therapists and this and BHTs and like, hey man, because I think if you transition from a military career into some sort of behavioral health, it will inform the foundation connectivity you need to do your own thing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think like, oh, and by the way, you don't have to do this in an austere environment.
Yeah, right. This is great.
You don't have to do this in a tent in the middle of some field somewhere or some airfield.
Yeah, it's climate controlled and everything.
Yeah. We're not going to make you come in at 6:30 in the morning and do PT that you may or may not want to do.
Well, that's funny.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity. I'm so looking forward to kind of just getting down in the weeds and just talking to people. You know, I like relating to people, and I like hearing who they are and where they've been and what have you done. And, oh man, that's cool. You were there at that thing, you know. And it kind of like that shared experience of just being in the military for that long and doing that many deployments. I think it really resonates with people. You're like, okay, you hear me, you understand, you know, and being in the Army is not, they think it's like Full Metal Jacket, stand up straight, you know, private pile. It's not that, you know, there is some of that, and that's definitely part of it, but you know, like just the day-to-day marathon of being like a guy in the military, like it don't stop. And it's going to keep going with or without you, right? And if you give everything to the military, it will take everything you will give, and it will give you nothing back but memories and a DD-214, you know. So like what you get back from the military, it's already given you. You know, you just got to figure out how to be resourceful with all of that information and knowledge and experience, and apply that into things that are practical after your career in the military. Yeah. You know, and not everybody is that insightful. Yeah. You know, there's not. And so if we can help in that facet and like just help people live like productive and generally happy lives, dude, you deserve that. You know, you deserve it.
For sure.
Everybody deserves that. You know, nobody deserves to just be miserable and like, you know, dragging around this, you know, proverbial rucksack, you know, for the rest of their life. You see them all the time. You pass by them on 25 every day, and they're just like, they don't know what to do with all this baggage. It's like, well, you could do something with it. You just got to look at it differently.
Yeah. Well stated.
Yeah.
Yeah, well stated. I was on a call this morning, and I said, somebody's asking, well, how's the military? I said, you know, this is going to be a new vertical for us. But frankly, man, we're going to check back in with Mike here in like 3 to 6 months. We might have an entirely new program built out of this. More will be revealed, man. Trust the process. Grateful to have you here. Thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for all you do in the community, Four Peaks. Looking forward to a lot of one days at a time. Man.
Hey, thank you for thinking I'm smart enough to even do this.
Let's go, baby. Yeah, appreciate you, Mike. Yeah. All right, my beautiful people, until next time. If I didn't say it on the front end, they'll introduce me with a little thing that says, Chris Burns, president and founder. Have a beautiful day. Don't forget to get outside and look at bikes.